Welcome to Manhattan Institute's Civil Society Awards. For nearly 20 years, the awards have honored inspiring nonprofit leaders from around the country. Their work assists those in need, strengthens our nation's communities, and keeps our social fabric from fraying. Tonight, you'll meet 5 outstanding organizations that continue this legacy, and each will be honored with a $25,000 prize. And now, your host for the 2020 Civil Society Awards program, Manhattan Institute's Howard Husock.
Good evening, and welcome to the 2020 Manhattan Institute Civil Society Awards presentation. I'm Howard Husock, Senior Fellow at the Institute and Director of our Tocqueville Project and Civil Society programs. Each year since 2001, we've recognized organizations and their leaders that embody much of what makes America an exceptional nation. They're local, but they address needs and problems found across the country. They're small, but they set big examples. They do so through private means, with charitable support, and through volunteer labor. This year, as we all struggle with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been reminded that we need government, but that government has its limitations. And we've been reminded anew of the mutual aid and its importance provided by the kinds of civil society organizations that we will be recognizing today. And so it's with a renewed sense of urgency that we bring to your attention the 2020 Civil Society Award winners, each of whom will receive a $25,000 prize. They come from all across America. There's a ceramic artist from rural New Mexico who decided that what his community really needed more than anything was a library. And so with some friends, he started one and wound up providing something much more than just a place for books, but an institution that helped to save a struggling small town. You'll meet an official from a Texas Symphony Orchestra who always dreamed of bringing together world-class musicians with the sons and daughters of Mexican immigrants who could never afford formal music lessons. Today, those kids are playing Beethoven thanks to her. You'll meet a nursing educator from small-town Ohio who came up with a better way to help those suffering from a problem that we're suffering with all across America, dementia, and a way to help those who are the caregivers of those suffering from that malady. You'll meet 3 millennials from New York City who were so concerned about how their elderly neighbors would get groceries during the pandemic lockdown that they organized volunteers, more than 10,000 volunteers, to bring food to their doorsteps. And we'll meet a member of the Grammy Hall of Fame and a Hollywood casting director who, mindful of their own childhoods, founded a summer camp for foster kids, where those urban children would have a chance to experience the great outdoors in a way they otherwise would never have the chance. Finally, we'll talk about the state of American civil society. Is it really healthy? With our greatest scholar on the subject, Harvard University's Robert Putnam. Before we meet our award winners, I'd like to thank the organizations that make our program possible. The Lynd and Harry Bradley Foundation, the O'Neill Family Foundation, the John Templeton Foundation, and for its support over the many years, the William E. Simon Foundation. And now, we bring you this year's 2020 Manhattan Institute Civil Society Award winners.
Presenting the first award to the Embudo Valley Library and Community Center, part of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program, is the Executive Director of Dolly Parton's nonprofit, the Dollywood Foundation, Nora Briggs.
Hi all, I bring greetings from Dolly. She wishes she was here. As you know, Dolly founded the Imagination Library in honor of her father. He was the smartest man she ever knew, but he never learned to read. Dolly's mission became inspiring kids to fall in love with books. But before he passed away, Dolly's father told her that the Imagination Library was the most important thing she had ever done. Tonight's awardee, Shel Neymark, understands this. In the 1980s, Dixon, New Mexico didn't have a library or much of anything else. Eventually, the rural town even lost its only grocery store. Shel and some friends got together to do something about this. The library began in one room with volunteers and volunteer librarians Built by donations and community members, it became the anchor of a revitalized Dixon. Today, the Embudo Valley Library and Community Center has over 20,000 books, community computers, and plenty of space for events. Like Dolly, the library cares about children's programs and has an early literacy program, after-school tutoring, and even a STEM program that offers students 3D printing and robotic classes. It offers so much more than a traditional library and has completely transformed a once struggling community. On behalf of Dolly Parton, the Dollywood Foundation, and her Imagination Library, it is our pleasure to present Manhattan Institute's Civil Society Award to a dedicated community leader who also believes in the power of books, Shel Neymark, and the Embudo Valley Library and Community Center.
About 1988, the town at that time was having a hard time. The local bar, which was a gathering place, had closed. The store would close a little while after that. There was not really a place for everybody to be together. It was really exciting to me to think about starting a library. We started raising money to build this building we're in. In 3 weeks, we raised $50,000. People were pledging $500 that I knew could barely afford to buy their groceries. People were so excited about it.
You know, anybody would drop what they're doing to help make this place a better place for the people that we have here.
The library has been very instrumental in education. I've had my granddaughter grow up here, and she was very active in the robotics program, and I think what they've added to the community is just amazing. It's like the glue that's keeping a lot of things together here. To me, it makes me very proud.
I really feel the mission of the library is to create community well-being, whether that's educational opportunities, employment, increased small business activity here, healthy living. We are very much invested in creating community well-being and helping this community thrive and prosper.
The library means so much to the whole community. It's real humbling to know that something this great is right in my backyard.
You know, to see it start as this tiny little library with donated books and volunteer librarians to grow into a place that has a radio station, fosters a co-op, fosters community in so many ways in education, is just like, it's a miracle.
And now, from the Embudo Valley Library and Community Center in Dixon, New Mexico, Shel Neymark.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. So the term civil society means society outside of the political and social realms. Civil society is about how people interact with each other and care for each other within families, communities, nations, and globally. I think serving civil society is among the highest callings that humanity has. So for the Embudo Valley Library and I to get this award is just a deep, deep honor. So thank you so much, Manhattan Institute. But this award really belongs to the hundreds of volunteers and donors who have made our existence possible. And it especially belongs to our librarians, past and present. Felicity, Minna, Shirley, Einar, Miley, Jay, Sandy, Elena, and Jane, thank you so much for the service you've given to our community. Strengthening civil society begins with service to individuals. One unusual service that our library provides is that people who don't have potable water come and fill containers from our well. One day, Felicity, our librarian, was chatting with a gentleman who was filling his water containers with his granddaughters, and he found out that he'd lost his job due to COVID. He didn't know that he was eligible for benefits, and he didn't really know how to use the computer. So Felicity invited him into the library, walked him through the process, and he successfully navigated the system. To me, one of the most important functions of a rural library is the connections that happen there between local citizens. One young single mother was taking college classes, and she needed tutoring help with her algebra class. So the library connected her with a local math professor. She totally fell in love with math, and it changed her life. Just last week, we celebrated her finishing her master's degree in engineering. The library has transformed our community, and it's a role model that other communities could follow. We're so grateful that the Manhattan Institute recognizes that rural libraries can be such an agent for transformative change and development. Though our library is a star, other libraries in New Mexico also do transformative work. For example, the library in Glenwood, New Mexico, the librarian fills up her car with books and videos and drives them around to people who are isolated in the mountains. In Estancia, New Mexico, when their largest employer closed, they held a jobs fair. But these small libraries are vulnerable because they don't have a reliable funding stream. Sometimes they close when they're needed the most. The library in Estancia, New Mexico closed when there was an oil bust. The library in Vaughan, New Mexico closed when the train stopped coming there. Because less than 20% of the Embudo Library's budget comes from government sources, it's private philanthropy that makes our library's existence possible. In honor of the Civil Society Award, I've opened an endowment at the Santa Fe Community Foundation. This endowment will fund 51 Pueblo and community libraries throughout our state. So if you would like to help us, there is a mechanism for you to do it. So thank you so much, Manhattan Institute. Your recognition strengthens our resolve to continue helping the rural libraries and serving the communities of New Mexico.
To present the next award to the El Paso Symphony Orchestra's Tocando Music Project is accomplished violinist and Assistant Director of Learning and Engagement Programs at Carnegie Hall, Cueva.
The great orchestras of the 21st century must not only create memorable musical moments of inspiration, they must also engage authentically with the communities they represent. The El Paso Symphony Orchestra, under the leadership of its executive director, Ruth Jacobson, is exemplary in embodying this call to action. Through the Tocando Music Project, youth from the historic Latino neighborhood El Segundo Barrio experience high-quality access to classical music training. Ruth Ellen's vision from 2013 to bring the joy of musical learning to her community is realized today by the symphony's talented teaching artists and the incredible children of the first and second generation immigrants that contribute to El Paso's rich cultural fabric. 5 years ago, we at Carnegie Hall saw the transformative work that Tocando was doing and have been supporting them in hopes of spotlighting their mission as a shining example of community music education on a national scale. Tocando means to play in Spanish, but Ruth Ellen has founded a program that teaches more than just playing an instrument. Tocando is a space for community building, taking artistic risks, and inspiring young people to realize their full potential. On behalf of Carnegie Hall, it is my pleasure to present the Manhattan Institute Civil Society Award to someone who has proven the power of music education, Ruth Ellen Jacobson and the Tocando Music Project.
There's nothing like watching a kid get his very own violin. For the kids that we're dealing with, that's huge. Tocando is an after-school program. It started in what we call in El Paso the barrio. These kids, they have nowhere to go after school. That's where they get vulnerable. These programs teach kids how to play music. But the goal of these programs really isn't to make musicians. The goal is to take the kids that we're working with and show them that they have options and ways that maybe they've never thought of.
It wasn't about serving the kids who would have access to private tutoring or to music programs in schools. It was really about reaching those kids who might never get that opportunity. And they have never said no to any child that walks through their doors. They see the kids for who they are.
Music has helped me find my place in life and in society. And I see music doing just the same for these kids. A lot of these kids maybe are not thinking about going to college. Take them on field trips to the local university, and then they see, oh, well, this is possible for me.
It's just that music always makes me happy. I don't know how to explain it. It just makes me happy.
It fills their soul. They're here to learn and to feel welcomed. I think that that's what makes a difference in the lives of these children.
No, it doesn't matter if they're in class or not. They're always there for our kids, for our community, for everybody. Thank you.
And now, from the Tocando Music Project in El Paso, Texas, Ruth Ellen Jacobson.
Thanks, Karen, for that lovely introduction. I'd like to thank the Manhattan Institute for this distinguished award and congratulate the other awardees who I am honored to be among. I accept this award tonight on behalf of a long line of people who work every day to make Tocando the unique program that it is. I also accept this award for the El Paso Symphony Board of Trustees, who each year agree to allocate 1/3 of the symphony's budget to Tocando, the El Paso Symphony Youth Orchestra, and other smaller education programs. Tocando is a music program that serves children, especially immigrants, in El Paso and Tornillo, Texas. For those of you who haven't been to this area, El Paso is very rich in Hispanic culture. It's located on the U.S. border with Juarez, Mexico. It is the second largest border metroplex in the U.S., with over 2 million people in the area. In fact, one of Tocando's locations is right across the street from the border. Tocando students face many challenges, including speaking Spanish as their first language, limited economic resources, social emotional struggles with families who are often separated by the border or other circumstances, making some at risk for unhealthy lifestyles and limited life goals. Tocando opens the students' world to the possibilities of what if and why not, and helps provide pathways to allow them to succeed in life. Our hope and goal is to keep children engaged and to take them from grade school all the way through college. Although music education isn't for everyone, it's life-changing for some. One example is Julieta, who came to us headstrong, hyperactive, with little desire to learn. She was always in trouble, slow to concentrate on her schoolwork, but then she fell in love with the music. She became transfixed when the symphony guest artists would visit the program or when she attended symphony concerts. She worked hard at her instrument and soon excelled not only in music, but in school too. Eventually, she won a spot in the El Paso Symphony Youth Orchestra, and we expect to attend her graduation from college one day. To summarize, I'd like to quote one of our teaching artists who summarized our program perfectly, and I quote, "Perhaps the most important, longest-lasting benefit our students receive from the program is a greater understanding of themselves, the recognition of personal responsibility, and their incredible ability to have agency over their own life trajectory." So thank you again to the Manhattan Institute for this award, which gives strength and empowerment to our students, their families, and our organization. If anyone is interested in more information about this program, they can call the El Paso Symphony Orchestra or go to the El Paso Symphony Orchestra website, epso.org. Thank you.
Up next, to present the Civil Society Award to New York's Invisible Hands, is one of Manhattan's great newsmen, the political anchor at Spectrum News New York 1, Errol Lewis.
When New York City shut down in March to slow the spread of the coronavirus, many elderly and high-risk people found themselves isolated and alone. For our vulnerable friends and family, even simple tasks like going to the store or almost anywhere suddenly became too risky. As restaurants and schools closed, they found that even the subway shut down for hours every night. It made it impossible to get around. That's when three compassionate young local folks decided that they wanted to help. Simone, Policano, Healy, Chait, and Liam Elkind took to social media and quickly made a whole lot of new friends, all interested in doing the same thing. They not only created an organization called Invisible Hands, they also built an entire network of volunteers eager to connect with their neighbors. They've partnered with churches, synagogues, food pantries, and other nonprofits to help deliver groceries and medicine free of charge to those who need it. Over the last 6 months, thousands of their volunteers have delivered more than $1 million worth of groceries in New York and New Jersey. And so we are grateful for these young leaders. We wish them luck as they bring the service to other cities around the country. It's now my pleasure to present Manhattan Institute's $25,000 Civil Society Award to the three co-founders of Invisible Hands, Simone Policano, Healy Chait, and Liam Elkind.
Invisible Hands started entirely by accident. On March 12th, I was walking home and I was walking past my local, key food supermarket, and I saw a lot of elderly folk going in and out. And I just remember feeling kind of uncomfortable and being like, God, I wish there were a way that I could go in and do their shopping for them. I went home and I posted on Facebook, does anybody know of a way that young, healthy volunteers could offer to bring groceries to those who are more at risk right now?
I saw a Facebook post from a friend of mine, Simone. So I reached out and I said, what if we made that organization? So we built a website, passed around a couple flyers, put out the call to action on social media.
We went to bed on a Sunday night thinking we were gonna do a couple deliveries and it was gonna be great and it was gonna be this little community effort. And then we woke up on Monday with missed calls from CNN and Good Morning America.
Within 72 hours, we had over 1,300 volunteers.
I've been wanting to figure out a way to help. I felt helpless. It was at the very beginning of COVID, first weekend. So I was like, oh, I can do this. I'd like to go grocery shopping and I have a car. This is a way I can help and actually make a difference.
Part of the biggest aspect of Invisible Hands is the social connection of it all. You get a lot of people calling and saying, I just need someone to talk to.
I think New Yorkers get a bad rep for, being, really busy and kind of gruff and hey, watch where you're going kind of thing. And I have found that to be so not true.
Invisible Hands is really about community and helping out their neighbors that they don't even know. And we have a lot of people who have formed beautiful friendships between 20-year-olds and 90-year-olds from 6 feet apart.
In the worst of times, I think it really can bring out the best in people.
Being able to kind of give a little bit of a bright spot is very nourishing for me personally.
3 20-somethings put together a website with a crazy idea of helping an entire city in need, and so that I'm able to have any impact on the city that's really turned me into the person I am today is incredible.
To know that this organization has been able to be that connective tissue is incredibly reaffirming and does give me faith that we will be able to pull through this.
And now, from Invisible Hands in New York City, Simone Policano, Healy Chait, and Liam Elkind.
Hi there, I'm Simone Policano, one of the 3 co-founders of Invisible Hands. We are so grateful for this recognition from Manhattan Institute and are humbled to be receiving the Civil Society Award alongside such wonderful organizations. As you just saw in that video, Invisible Hands, probably unlike most of our fellow awardees, was started entirely by accident. But it's really everything that came after that accident that has come to define our organization. We amassed over 10,000 volunteers at the height of the pandemic in New York City, both foot soldiers on the ground completing deliveries at no cost to those in need, as well as remote volunteers helping out on our back-end admin team. We've completed thousands of deliveries, food, medicine, and other necessities, and have expanded to New Jersey and Philadelphia and are about to launch in Hartford, Connecticut, and Atlanta, Georgia. And we've been able to do all of this because Invisible Hands tapped into something that was really threatened by the coronavirus, which is the ethos of community. COVID created a unique situation where the younger generation really had to step up to take care of those who helped us grow up. And to me, that meant giving back to the city that raised me. I will never forget taking the order request for a woman on the Upper West Side who told me, after giving me her order details, that day was her 94th birthday, and that Invisible Hands was the best birthday gift we ever could have given her. She lived 3 blocks from where we grew up, and our paths would never have crossed if not for this virus that was supposed to be isolating us and keeping us from one another, in fact, bringing us together. And that is the ethos of Invisible Hands, a group of people, first a few, then many, who wanted to help foster community at a time when we all felt more disparate than ever. We and our volunteers have certainly benefited from this work just as much as the recipients have. And next, let me introduce my fellow co-founder, Healy Chait.
Thanks, Simone. Invisible Hands is completely powered by volunteers who work tirelessly for their communities. Whether they're at home taking grocery requests, matching community members with other volunteers, picking up their neighbor's medication, or delivering fresh produce from local food pantries. They wait in long lines, wear sweaty masks, and deliver heavy grocery bags on foot so that someone they've never met has enough food for the week. We also started a food insecurity partnership program, which alone has provided more than 1,400 free boxes of groceries to New York City families. At a time when so many need to stay in, Invisible Hands volunteers are going out, and we wouldn't be here without them. But Invisible Hands is much more than a grocery delivery service. We are connecting neighbors and communities in ways unimaginable, even before the pandemic. We believe you don't need to be the same age or follow each other on social media in order to be engaged. The true fabric of our communities is sewn into the little actions that demonstrate how we're all in this together. And finally, let me introduce Liam Elkind, our third co-founder.
Thanks, Healy. This pandemic has exacerbated racial and economic inequities that will persist long after this crisis. So in the near future, Invisible Hands will be expanding to new geographic regions and going deeper into our current communities to help tackle some of these longer-standing problems with food insecurity and poverty. We're also launching a new program to help deliver ballots on behalf of the at-risk in New York and New Jersey to ensure that every voice is heard in this election. These are scary times, but if you look closely, you'll see stories of hope, of love. I got an email a few weeks ago from a woman in Michigan. Her 83-year-old father, Harry, lived alone in Manhattan and had been diagnosed with COVID-19. He was isolated and had no way of getting food. So she submitted a request online, and our volunteer Duncan started delivering food and medicine to Harry once a week. And then they would sit on either side of Harry's door and chat. They never actually saw each other in person. They wouldn't have recognized each other if they passed on the street, but they became friends. After Harry passed away, his daughter wrote to us and said, "My father was lonely and afraid, but you made it possible for him to live a normal life. Please know that your help was not in vain, and that he spoke so highly of the help, reassurance, and relief that you provided." That is why Invisible Hands exists. Thank you to the Manhattan Institute for this honor and for recognizing that spirit of service that is within all of us. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit us online at invisiblehandsdeliver.org. It's on all of us to help one another right now, because when the world is pulling us all apart, it's only by pulling together that we'll pull through.
Presenting the next award to Life, a dementia-friendly foundation, is someone who has treated life-altering diseases and knows firsthand how powerful life's work is for those living with dementia. Neurologist and Life Board member, Dr. Supriya Mahajan.
Thank you. The COVID-19 pandemic has been devastating to our nation's most vulnerable, especially those already suffering from chronic diseases. For those of us involved in the care of people living with dementia, we have seen the power of Life, a dementia-friendly foundation, in the lives of participants. The pandemic is a daily reminder of how important a dementia-savvy community is for our patients and their caregivers, as we feel the void left by being unable to gather safely. We are grateful for Carole Klingler's visionary leadership in creating an organization that delivers holistic support for people living with dementia and for those who love someone living with dementia. At Life, participants have found their safe place. They've found their tribe. They find access to the parts of life that uplift us all, activities that support the mind and body, answers to questions that no book or article can provide, and a routine sanctuary from diseases that never relent. Carole and her organization are bringing hope, support, and a better quality of life to those touched by dementia in our Ohio communities. Life has been a game changer, bringing together volunteers, businesses, churches, and in doing so has succeeded in offering programs free of charge. I'm grateful for Carole's work in Ohio and believe Life's model, which is so elegantly reproducible, could help many, many around the country. Tonight, it is my pleasure to present Manhattan Institute's $25,000 Civil Society Award to Life, a dementia-friendly foundation, and its CEO and co-founder, Carole Klingler.
I think there's a lot of stigmatism and preconceived ideas about things with dementia, and a lot of times people are kind of shut out or ignored. For years, I kept telling my husband, I just feel this calling to do something. There's got to be something. There's got to be a better way. And in my mind, I thought it has to be in one location and like a 4-hour window where people could come and go anytime during that 4 hours.
Life, it's a completely free community service for people to tap into. It's truly an amazing organization.
My husband had one of the most severe types of dementia that you could, but being able to attend Life, it was something that gave us something to look forward to, because those 4 hours every Tuesday and Thursday were absolutely priceless to me.
The idea was to promote education for the caregivers and engagement for the people living with dementia so that both were learning and growing.
We're just looking for a place for my mom to be active and for me as well.
We wanted to provide it at no cost. We wanted that sense of community because now, you know, we can say stuff like, we're low on paper cups, and next thing you know, we have a year's supply because everybody brings in paper cups. And people come in saying, how can I help?
It's just an awesome, positive place. We make sure we help each other. And that makes me happy, and that's why I look forward to going.
I met new friends, new sisters, and it just helped me a lot to continue and to learn how to take care of her.
I'm just so thankful for the support in our community, for all of our churches that have opened the doors and have just trusted us.
It's just such a pure, beautiful thing that they've created with this organization.
Most people want to do a good job for their loved one. They want to care for them. And I don't think we support them enough.
Life just provided that energy and the excitement to continue on every day.
And now, from Life, a dementia-friendly foundation in Vermillion, Ohio, Carole Klingler.
Thank you. And on behalf of our foundation, A Dementia Friendly Life, our board of directors, staff, volunteers, caregivers, and participants, it's a blessing to receive this amazing award. It seems like everyone knows someone who's been confronted by dementia, and Before Life, which stands for Linking Individuals and Families Through Education and Engagement, our communities offered a lot of wonderful resources for people with dementia, but a lot of them were poorly attended and hard to access, and yet we knew people needed this help. Through my work as a nurse in long-term care, I became aware of this need and just felt driven to find a better way to support people living with this syndrome. Initially, I was not sure where to begin, but Lakeview Baptist Church in Vermillion, Ohio, one of our 3 churches, was the first to offer us space, and my husband became our first volunteer. My daughter became our first service manager, and they helped make this vision a reality. A Dementia-Friendly Life's mission of faith is to partner with anyone touched by dementia and offer resources, education, and engaging activities which promote and support the quality of life for the participant and the caregiver. Our weekly program is called a Memory Cafe, which provides a safe, familiar setting for those living with dementia and their caregivers. We offer music and music therapy, arts and crafts, educational programming, student activities, exercise, animal therapy, and so much more. With 4 hours of programming, at least weekly, in the same location, it's worth the trip. And people can come and go at any time. We offer the Memory Cafe at no cost to participants and caregivers thanks to deep community support. Many of our programs are sponsored, such as our lunches or our educational programs, and many of our volunteers come from the churches and from our own talented caregivers. We have built trust with our participants, and they love the environment so much that their caregiver can step out of the room for an educational program, a support group, or just a moment to theirself without distressing their loved one. The biggest reward is the relationships that we have been able to build together. For many, this is their new family of support. Patty is one of those people. Patty is the loving wife of Frank, and Frank had a very difficult type of dementia. In Frank's case, he showed personality changes and continually felt a need to be on the go. When Patty and Frank first came through the doors, Patty looked overwhelmed. She wasn't sure what she was going to find at life, but she was desperate. Patty and Frank became faithful attendees, and my husband befriended Frank, often giving Patty a much-needed break to spend time with the other caregivers. One day, Patty wrote me a note that simply said, "Life saved my life." After about 2 years, Frank's condition declined rapidly, and he did pass away. The impact of what we do really hit me at Frank's funeral. When my husband and I arrived, we were not expecting to see 3 rows of our own participants. What moved me the most is knowing how unusual it is for someone with this type of dementia to develop any new friends. And oftentimes they even alienate their old friends. But right in front of us were about 20 people who had met Frank in the midst of his illness and cared about him and his wife. To me, that's powerful. This is just one of many stories that inspires my work. Personally, my work at A Dementia-Friendly Life is a calling, and all through this journey, we see God's hand in everything we do. I am so thankful for this award from the Manhattan Institute because I know it'll help us share our successful model with others. There are so many people in our communities that are willing to help, and there's so many more who need that help. We believe our model of support can benefit anyone touched by dementia and their families. If you're interested in learning more about what we do, please look us up at dflife.org. Thank you so much.
Present the final award to the Felix Organization. We have an Oscar nominee and an Emmy Award-winning actor. You'll know her from the classics Annie Hall and The Princess Bride. She's starring right now in Hunters with Al Pacino on Amazon Prime. The very funny Carole Kane.
Oh, hi everybody. I'm so excited to have this privilege because I count Daryl McDaniels and Sheila Jaffe as my dear friends. And I'm honored to be on the board of the Felix Organization. There are more than 400,000 children living in the U.S. foster care system. Many of their lives are marked by trauma, uncertainty, and loneliness. Long before Daryl McDaniels became DMC of the legendary hip-hop group Run DMC, and Sheila Jaffe won the Emmy for her casting of The Sopranos, both New Yorkers were adopted by loving parents. One grew up in Queens, the other in the Bronx. They were the lucky ones because they were taken home. So many kids are not taken home. So to share their good fortune, Daryl and Sheila in 2006 created Camp Felix, a summer camp for foster care children who may otherwise never have this opportunity. Camp Felix. Today, the Felix Organization has empowered more than 10,000 children in New York City and Los Angeles by providing life-changing experiences through 5 different camps and year-round opportunities with the help of more than 100 volunteers. Their work provides stability and hope for some of our nation's most vulnerable children, helping them realize their full potential to grow into positive, confident, and successful adults. And I have had the honor of knowing some of these kids growing up through the camp since 2006, who are now beautiful adults. Okay, it is now my honor to present Daryl McDaniels, Sheila Jaffe, and the Felix Organization with the Civil Society Award. Bravo! Yippee! Take it away.
I found out that I was adopted when I was 35 years old. I felt alone. I felt different. I realized, even though that fortunately I got adopted, that I was once one of those kids. And then I said, if everything that was given to me allowed me to become the person that I am today, what if we did that for all of the kids who are in so-called unfortunate situations? We decided 10 years ago to do a place called Camp Felix.
Camp Felix campers are from the foster care system. Oftentimes, with all of that instability in their lives, Camp Felix can be the one consistent element, and they know that no matter what's going on during the year, Camp Felix is here for them every summer.
Having a lot of adults in their life that they feel that they couldn't depend on. At Camp Felix, all of that is turned inside out.
It was the first place where I can actually feel myself opening up to people and letting people in, because I felt like I was just abruptly put into the foster care system. It just sparked something in me, and I was like, this is my family, like this is my home.
This is the greatest creation that I have ever been involved with. There was this thing waiting to be created that needed us to found it.
Give kids the opportunity that you have. Give kids the opportunities that they think that they would never have. And they don't just do well, they excel.
And I am living proof of what happens when you give resources and opportunity to those kids.
And now, from the Felix Organization in New York and Los Angeles, Sheila Jaffe and Daryl DMC McDaniels.
Thank you, Carole, and thank you to the Manhattan Institute for this recognition. Daryl and I are so honored to be in the company of the 4 other winners who are so inspiring in the work that they are doing to support communities in need. And we are so happy to be accepting this award on behalf of the Felix Organization. So the beginning for Felix was really simple. And when Daryl and I first met, we knew that we were fortunate to have been adopted. And we knew that we were able to succeed in life because we had a forever home and we had loving parents. But not every child has that experience. So we asked ourselves, what about those children? The children who don't get adopted and who aren't raised in a loving home? Who is there to give them opportunities and experiences like we had? While the mission of Felix is to enrich the lives of children in foster care, I can honestly say that standing before you today, we are the ones who have been enriched. We are the ones who not only get to make a difference, but to see the difference. Child to child, Black, brown, white, gay, straight. One thing that we found to be true is that hope is a great equalizer. Giving a child hope helps them overcome their fears and their insecurities and the obstacles that they face. Felix teaches these children to trust, and to trust that we are there for them, to trust that we will help them on their journey. As one of our campers said to me and Daryl, Camp Felix, it's not just camp, it's home. Daryl and I started Felix in 2006, and 15 years later, 5 camps strong, the Felix organization is providing a supporting and loving community, a chance for growth and a better future for hundreds of foster children each year. We know that what foster children need is opportunities. We know that their situation does not define them, and it is our job to give back and to give them all the support that we can. We are so proud of the over 10,000 children we have served to date, and we are so grateful to the Manhattan Institute for helping us to continue serving the next 10,000. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And now, I would like to introduce to you my partner in hope and my dear friend, Darryl DMC McDaniels.
Thank you for the great assist of Sheila. Thank you for the great pass. I love having you as my quarterback. Now, I want to thank the Manhattan Institute for giving us this award. I guess this is proof that what we're doing here at the Felix organization is something good. But the Felix organization would not exist without the people that allow it to run. Me and Sheila, we just built a machine. There's people who are the electricity, the energy, the power that allows Felix to do what we do here. I want to thank Myra, I want to thank Amanda, I want to thank Tiffany, I want to thank everybody on the board of the Felix organization. I want to thank everybody from the staff to the counselors, to the cooks, to the janitors, to the groundskeepers that allow Camp Felix to be one of the coolest camps in the whole universe. Without you, Camp Felix and the Felix organization would not be able to do what it is that we do. But most importantly, let's salute, let's big up, and let's thank all the children that make Camp Felix possible. I do not like when people get up in front of the children and start speaking, we need to do something for the underprivileged children. Hold up, let's change that definition. They're not underprivileged. If they're so underprivileged, give them a privilege. Give them an opportunity like what we do here at the Felix organization. And they don't just do well, they excel. They are not underprivileged. They are children of potential. So don't you forget that. The Felix organization just want to make their lives better so that we can make this whole world and this whole universe better. Thank you again, Manhattan Institute. It's time for the Felix family to get back to work.
And now, to introduce tonight's keynote speakers, your host, Howard Husock.
Now, that really is a hard act to follow, but we're going to try. You know, if you want to support the Felix organization or any of our other award winners, you can go to civilsociettyawards.com. You'll find all the links you need. I hope you will support them. And now we turn to this year's keynote speakers. None of our award winners self-consciously considered themselves part of American civil society, yet all contributed to its health and vitality. In doing so, they provide a counterexample to the trend documented by our next guest, the Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam. As the author of the 2000 book Bowling Alone, he used the arresting image of that title to bring us to confront the decline in community organizations in America and the alienation that can replace it. Bob Putnam is the Malkin Research Professor of Public Policy at Harvard. He's the recipient of the National Humanities Medal, the nation's highest honor for contributions to the humanities. He's that rare, very rare scholar whose research became a best-selling book. He introduced such terms as social capital and, yes, civil society into widespread popular discussion. It tells me that Putnam County, New York, where Camp Felix is based, was named for his great-great-great-grandfather Israel Putnam, who fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Bob sees his current work as part of his effort to save America. I guess that's a family tradition. He's joined by Shaylin Romney Garrett. She's a founding member of WEAVE, the Social Fabric Project at the Aspen Institute, A Peace Corps veteran, she and her husband James Garrett co-founded Think Unlimited, an Arabic language curriculum on creativity and critical thinking, which, in partnership with Queen Rania Abdullah, was introduced to public schools in Jordan. She received her degree in government from Harvard College, and she and Bob are the co-authors of The Upswing, How America Came Together a Century Ago and How We Can Do It Again. Welcome Bob Putnam and Shaylin Romney Garrett.
Thanks very much, Howard.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Bob, we've just recognized some individuals and their organizations who are making stirring contributions to their communities. As you reflect on the themes of Bowling Alone 20 years after its publication, how would you describe the general state of American civil society?
Well, Howard, let me begin by saying that it's an honor for me and for Shaylin to be on this program, a special honor because of the extraordinary work done by the people who are receiving awards today. They're remarkable people. I've looked carefully at the list of the people who are the award recipients, and they're remarkable success stories in very different parts of the country. They happen to be in parts of the country that actually I know a little bit about, from the Rio Grande to Manhattan, or at least to New York City. And so the first thing I want to do is join in the general applause for the extraordinary work that these honorees have done. And they're holding out an example to the whole rest of the country. And I think that this award ceremony itself will contribute to holding up, shining their light, raising their light so that it covers more of the country. I have to add, however, to that they are still nationwide the exceptions and not the rule. And this is the sad part of the story that we have to tell. It was told a little bit in Bowling Alone, but the more recent evidence says it's still true today, that there has been, not just over the last 5 or 10 years, but over the last 50 years, a steady decline, a continuing decline in what we call social capital. That is a continuing decline in civic engagement, in connections with other people, in social trust. We trust other people much less than we used to, and we even trust other people less now than we did 25 years ago when Bowling Alone was published. So the steady long-term decline nationwide, I'm afraid, is continuing. And that part of the story, I think, is what we tell in the new book, The Upswing. And at some point, I probably should tell you a little bit about our findings in The Upswing, because they're relevant to where we might go from here.
That's a great idea.
Well, so I need to step back a little bit and tell you a little bit about a history lesson, give a little bit of a history lesson. As you know, as all of us know, really, America's in a pickle today. No matter what your politics, everybody agrees that we're in a pickle. Everybody agrees that we're in a period of extreme polarization, political polarization. Probably the most polarized America has ever been since the Civil War, which is a great deal of polarization. America is also probably more unequal in economic terms. The gap between rich and poor is probably bigger now, maybe than it's ever been in American history. And the degree to which Americans connect with one another, the degree to which they, trust one another, go to meetings with other people, and so on, the degree to which they connect with their family or neighbors, that is also at a very low ebb now. That's the story of Bowling Alone, of course. And the culture of America has become about as inward-looking and about as narcissistic as you can imagine. But now let's step into a time machine. We're going to go back 125 years. We get out of the time machine. It's about, let's say, 1890, something like that. And we step out of the time machine. Of course, the first thing we want to know is, how are things going here now? And it turns out exactly the same thing was true 125 years ago, as is true now. In 1890 to 1900, what was then called the Gilded Age, America was at an extremely unequal period in the economics of our country. The gap between rich and poor then was as great probably as it had ever been or ever would be until now. This gap between rich and poor, the degree of social disconnection had hardly ever been greater. The degree of polarization had only been greater once in previous history, which is namely the Civil War, and the degree of cultural self-centeredness was greater than it had ever been before. So now imagine that you have a curve linking those two, you have a line linking those two periods, a historical line in which you begin in 1890, a period very much like ours, and then you end up in a period very much like ours. And what happens in between? Well, this is the really interesting thing. What happened in between was at the turn of the last century, at the turn of this last turning point in around 1900, 1910, America got on a track, it was called the Progressive Era, got on a track in which we steadily for the next 70 years, beginning around 1910 and then more or less uninterruptedly for 70 years, we got more and more connected, more and more equal, more and more, less and less polarized, more and more cooperative in political terms, and more focused on what we had in common rather than what kept us apart. And that whole curve went up and up until it went up through the New Deal, and it went up in the Great Depression, and it went up during World War II, and after it kept going after World War II and kept rising until sometime in the middle 60s. And sometime in the middle 60s, every single one of those lines that I've just described suddenly reversed course and began a long downward decline. So we call that trend the I, we, I curve, because we begin in 1900 in a period of America being very focused on the I, and then we gradually over the course of the next 70 years come to a society which is actually remarkably focused on we, not perfectly, of course, but much more focused probably than we've ever been in American history. We were becoming a we society. And then, like overnight, within a matter of a couple of years, we reversed trends and ended up now in an equally I society. So this is the I, we, I curve that we've discovered in the course of the research for the upswing. It's highly relevant to the work that these honorees are doing, because we think we can learn from that I, we, I curve. We can learn lessons that are highly relevant today.
Well, thank you, Bob. That's a terrific summary of a marvelous book, and thank you for compressing it that way. Shaylin, let me turn to you, and let's start to think about how we return to some elements of we. First of all, do we think that's an important thing to do? Why do we think it's an important thing to do? I'd love to just hear you make that very basic case, and whether that's something that the kind of organizations that we've honored tonight and the kind of organization that you yourself helped to start, is that where the progress towards some kind of unified culture can occur at that local level? Is that the important place to focus?
Absolutely. You know, I think as to the question of whether it's important or valuable for us to return to we, I think the answer is absolutely yes. The remarkable confluence of trends that Bob has described show us that this isn't just a cultural moment that we're in. It's not just a moment of cultural individualism. It turns out that a moment of cultural individualism is extraordinarily correlated with all of these other negative outcomes that we see: income inequality, political polarization. And so we might ask ourselves, you know, do we want to turn back toward we? Well, do we want to live in a society that's more equal and less polarized? I think the answer is definitely yes. I mean, I think that we face a moment of choice in America today. Do we continue down an ever darkening path, or do we grab the reins of history and move in a different direction? And that was really the question that the progressives asked themselves at the turn of the last century. And you're absolutely right, Howard, to point out that one of the main lessons that we draw from the progressive era in our book is that this was not a program that started on the national level. It was not a program that was led by charismatic political leadership. We often look at the progressive era and we focus on the part of it that was its culmination, big national programs that changed the face of America, institutionally and structurally. But in fact, the progressive era starts, and the data shows this quite clearly. This isn't just merely a historical narrative. The data shows quite clearly that these upward trends began quite a bit earlier on. And the way that they began was when local people started looking around and saying, this is a rather unappealing situation that we find ourselves in. Who are we going to look to change this? How are we going to solve these problems? And the answer that they found was in themselves, that citizens empowered with a sense of agency had the ability to change the course of history. And it's absolutely true that the progressive era was characterized by a vast foment of citizen innovation that really fueled the upswing for 70 years. That citizen innovation took the form of programs that were redressing inequalities, but it also took the form of new and different ways to bring Americans together that created a vast store of social capital that compounded over time. And I think one of the things that we learned from looking at this era is that it was an incredibly innovative period. And the innovations that were brought about locally. And they were innovations that really transcended a gridlocked left-right framework. The progressive era was not progressive in the sense that we use that term today. It was a bipartisan movement. It was a widely diverse movement. And I absolutely think that looking to the type of entrepreneurs and innovators that you're featuring tonight is where we can look to find our hope for America turning the corner. One of the instances that we love to cite is that many people don't realize that the public high school was actually invented during the American progressive era, not by policymakers, not by pundits or education wonks, but by real people living in small towns in the Midwest in the United States, who saw that the structure of the economy was changing, saw that their children needed a secondary education, couldn't afford to send them off to the private schools, which were the only thing that were available at the time, and came together as communities to create and fund secondary education for all of the kids in town. That is a we solution that was not brought about by national level innovators. It was brought about by local level innovators, just exactly like the people that you are honoring today. And I think that is the absolute first and best place that we look to find hope in these troubled times.
Well, thanks so much for that. Bob, turning slightly away from that, let me ask you to put your public policy hat on, though, and think about which levers of public policy, if any, but which ones would help move us back toward a more shared polity than what we have now.
Well, that's a good question, Howard. I might quibble a little bit with the idea of moving back, as we're very much of the view that our problem in America today is not to try to move back to some golden age like the 60s or 70s. Our problem is to move forward, and we're trying to learn lessons from the past that would apply now. It's also true that many of the actual policy solutions or policy issues that the original progressives in that earlier period faced are not exactly the same issues that we face now. I mean, we face issues, for example, of global warming. They had environmental problems for sure, but not global warming. And so we're not saying you can just do what they did, like invent the national parks. That's one of the things they did. That's not a solution. That's not a particular policy solution that fits where we are now. But what we do think that we can learn from that earlier period is strategies of broader strategies that reformers can use right now to try to move our country forward. And Shailene talked about some of those. She talked about, for example, the importance of beginning at the grassroots. She talked about the fact that national charismatic leadership was a lagging variable, not a leading variable. Another thing that you can see if you look back at that earlier period that is highly relevant today is in that earlier period, the real movers and shakers, the people who mattered most were young people. Those progressive heroes that we talk about in the book and that you know yourself very well about, Howard, is that although we think of them as old folks because we've seen pictures of them when they were much older, but the people like, Jane Addams and the whole list of heroes of the progressive era, when they were doing their work, were in their 20s and 30s, not in their 70s and 80s. And why is that relevant today? Because we think the same, that strategy that you need to begin with, you need to focus especially on contributions and the activities and the agitation of young people is directly relevant today. We think, for example, and people will disagree about their policies, but Greta Thunberg, the Swedish girl who's been leading the fight on global warming, or these kids from Dorothy Stoneman High School in Florida, who've been creating, a mass movement across the country against gun violence. I'm not talking about the content of this. I'm saying that's what it looks like. It's people like that who led the charge in the earlier period, and we think it's people like that who will lead the charge this time. That's an example of the kind of lesson we can learn from that earlier period. I mean, there's also a lesson that's important. Shailene actually is more eloquent than I am about this, about the importance of moral change then and we hope now. Shailene, you want to jump in on that point? Because I think that's really important.
I do. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that characterized the progressives who led this vast upswing that we saw was not just their youth and not just their ability to act locally, but their ability to do what historian Richard Hofstadter called engage in moral indignation directed inward. So asking themselves, we're not just calling for a moral awakening in the sense of pointing a finger at the idle rich and saying, you're the ones that are destroying society, but rather saying, what role am I playing? In what way am I complicit in the type of society that we are now living in? That's the type of question that really lit a fire under many of these progressive reformers. And it's the type of question that I think as well will light a fire under those who will lead us into an upswing today as well. And I know as you interviewed and combed through the hundreds of people that you looked at in order to offer these civil societies awards, I'm sure that this is something that you saw as a common thread in them, that they each in their own lives came to a moment where they realized this is not the world, this is not the America that they wanted to live in, and that they had a moral obligation to do something about it. And that for sure was a motivation for me as I engaged in social entrepreneurship. And I hope it's something that we can take as a model from the progressive era today to ask ourselves, what type of values do we want to build our society on? Let's rethink those and reframe those for a modern world. And of course, those values have to include absolute and full inclusion, which we might just want to briefly point out was not a feature of the first progressive era, but is something that absolutely must be a part of any type of upswing that we would hope to bring about today.
I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank our keynoters. It's a terrific book, The Upswing. Fair warning to baby boomers, they're very tough on my generation as having invented I and narcissism. And I think we probably have to plead guilty. I've been doing penance myself for some time. But it's a terrific overview that combines social science and history. And here it is again, The Upswing, how America came together a century ago and how we can do it again. Thanks, Bob Putnam, Shailene Romney Garrett, for really highlighting our awards program this year. I'm Howard Husock, Manhattan Institute. Thanks to all of you. Thanks to our keynotes, and congratulations again to our award winners.
Thank you for joining the Manhattan Institute this evening. To support tonight's winners, please visit their websites. To learn more about the Civil Society Awards, go to civilsociettyawards.com.